Pandemics, natural disasters, and global conflicts all have one thing in common. They could impact your domestic supply chain. I'm Scott Hollinger, Vice President of Sales Operations at Anderson Trucking Service. Today we want to talk a little bit about how your domestic supply chain can be impacted by these three things. Let's start with global pandemics. They can have a major impact on every facet of your supply chain, from freight availability, trucker availability, warehouse hours, labor shortages, port strikes. You can imagine how all of these will impact your supply chain. When you go to make a delivery, that warehouse may or may not be open. When you go to pick up at a port, that port may or may not be working or may have a significant backlog due to shortages at origin on the ocean side. What does that mean for your supply chain? Truck availability could be scarce. There are going to be a lot of trucks in the industry that are hung up somewhere in their network. That could impact your supply chain. Could be a delayed pickup, could be a delayed delivery because they're stuck somewhere due to a global pandemic. What can you do to plan? You can allow yourself a better pickup window, lengthen that a little bit and give some flexibility to the truck or equipment that's coming in to pick up that shipment. You can do the same thing on the delivery side. Notify your customers or the site that you're delivering to that it's going to be impacted by a global pandemic. Allow for a little more time and a little more flexibility in your supply chain and you'll have more success during a global pandemic. Let's talk about natural disasters and how they're going to impact your supply chain. Take, for instance, a hurricane down in the southeastern US. What are trucks going to be doing right after that hurricane? They're going to be supporting the disaster recovery efforts. They're going to be taking supplies, goods, and other things down to help that area recover from the disaster. What does that mean for you? Those trucks aren't going to be available to haul your freight, potentially. They could be down supporting the natural disaster. That's one example. Another could be, take an example of a shipment from Minneapolis to Texas, where that driver is going to drive right through Tornado Alley. That tornado could cause your truck to be hung up before the weather, waiting and riding out that weather. It's going to delay your delivery at destination. So be well aware of the natural disasters that are going to impact your supply chain and plan accordingly. Next, let's talk a little bit about global conflicts and how that could impact your supply chain. First, I would suspect that fuel prices could rise depending on where the fuel is sourced from and where the conflict is. That's going to impact the price for the transportation of your goods. So I would plan accordingly to make sure you have a flexible fuel schedule. That's going to allow you a little bit more capacity. The second thing that could impact your supply chain during a global conflict would be the shipment of military goods by truck. That's going to limit the capacity available for the public sector if those trucks are used to haul military goods. So if supply and demand are imbalanced, it could likely impact the price that you're going to have to pay and the available capacity that's out there for you in order to move your goods. So again, we can plan accordingly with a little bit extra transit time built in at pickup and destination, and we can allow rates to flex with market as supply and demand moves to support the global conflict. Hopefully now you understand a little bit more about how you can plan accordingly from a price and capacity standpoint in order to reduce your exposure and impact when one of these three things does occur. Today we focused on domestic supply chain disruptions. We also have an article on international and global supply chain disruptions. Head over to our Learning Hub and find the How Do Global Supply Chain Disruptions Impact International Shipping article, and that will run you through how you are impacted on the international side.